Hello and good afternoon, Dan. Very pleased to meet you and pleased to meet everyone who's joining us today as well. I'm here with Dan Varroney. He's written a tremendous book on reimagining industry growth, strategic partnerships in an era of uncertainty. So thought it would be brilliant to bring him here and talk about the state of associations across sectors. And welcome. Thank you for joining us in this leading by association segment. You talk a lot about COVID-19 being this black swan moment and really catalyzing a lot of strategic partnerships across industries and across industry associations, and we've seen how a lot of forced collaboration happened, which led to a lot of growth for certain industries. Some couldn't cope, but I'm keen to hear why you decided to write about strategic partnerships. I mean, you talk about the three pillars as customer centricity, relationship centricity, and business centricity. But I mean, I've always thought about things as being about processes, people, and technology. So, but your framework is very interesting. So, if you could explain a bit more about why are these three the key elements of strategic partnerships, and why are these important, and what are the dynamics at work here?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Very excited to be here and very appreciative. So the nature of the book really came about in what is a very complex, a highly complex world. We do live in an era of chronic uncertainty, and there's a lot of discussion around problems. And what I wanted to do was try and break new ground on solutions. And more often than not, both companies and trade associations are inside out in their focus. They're focused on their challenges and their problems. And what I sought to do was, one, to understand the nature of strategic partnerships and the extent to which they were effective. And then secondly, sought to understand where there were industries who sought out strategic partnerships with trade associations, and then develop case studies on how effective these strategic partnerships performed. But essentially, I wrote the book at a time that people were searching for new and different thinking. And I wanted to break new ground. I believe I did in each of the 5 case studies.
And as you wrote this through the pandemic and when the pace of change was highest, how did your solutions or your observations evolve?
You know, it's a great question. When we all went into lockdown, I had done a good deal of preparation and getting ready to write the book, and had done quite a bit of research, quite a bit of industry interviews with industry executives. And when we went into shutdown, there were 2 things I could do. One was to work with our clients, and 2, write the book. So I thought I would take full advantage of the opportunity. So what I did is I engaged a researcher and an editor and a small team of people to collaborate with, to conceptualize what the book would be about. And essentially what I did is I was writing it because I couldn't go anywhere. It gave me the opportunity to conceptualize what a new and different world would be post-COVID, and how these strategic partnerships could add substantial value to industries and to trade associations.
Yeah, and these 3 pillars that you're talking about, these strategic partnerships, are they true for just associations, or would you say they would be true for other entities as well?
So, you know, what's interesting about strategic partnerships, so clearly they exist between companies. So companies like Starbucks and PepsiCo get together, or Starbucks and Barnes & Noble and other companies get together and form these strategic partnerships. So in several cases, they don't merge, they form these strategic partnerships to leverage each other's strength, to get into markets and markets of opportunity they wouldn't have had otherwise, and to grow. And it was an interesting concept for me to explore. But what I learned is that strategic partnerships between and among companies is more common than I expected as I started the research and started to write the book. What was interesting to me was the extent to which that I identified industry executives who saw strategic partnerships with trade associations as having high business impact in the ability to shape the external business environment. That's what was new and different and actually fascinating for me, that these trade association strategic partnerships are almost viewed as strategic business units of the industry. They've got the ability to advocate on policy, whether it be at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, that they can work with local regulators, state regulators, and federal regulators, that these partnerships help industries far extend their reach. Because essentially what it does is it creates this rising tide that lifts all boats approach. It brings all interests and all parts of the value chain together to identify pre-competitive solutions. And I learned in a number of cases, it's very effective.
And how long do you think it takes to establish such currency, or where the strength of your strategic partnerships with the trade association is high enough and it's strong enough to glue the entire industry together? I'm sure you must be seeing a range across different industries.
So you're asking, it's really a great question. So no industry and no trade association should think that it's snapping your fingers and it happens. It's a process. It's a process where the industry and its leaders come together with the trade association. They conduct research on the industry, what its challenges are, what outcomes they seek to achieve. And then they go through a deliberate planning process to say, what are the pre-competitive strategies and solutions that we need to build? And then what other players do we need at the table with us? Are there other parts of the value chain, whether it be at the raw materials level, the supplier level, the retailer level, and then who are the trade associations that represent those groups? And then how do we build an ecosystem that brings all of these players to the table? And it's a process that, generally speaking, takes a few years, one, to build, and two, to build that trust and be able to function effectively and efficiently. So if you look at the recreational boating industry that I write about in my book, that's a strategic partnership between the recreational boating industry and the National Marine Manufacturers Association that is still evolving in its strategic partnerships. And what they did is they were successful in getting the value chain to see that it was imperative that everyone understood that what impacted one part of the value chain impacted every part of the value chain. But that took time. But now that they've done it, now they continue to build on their momentum.
Yes, you point to a range of very fascinating industries, from recreational boating, baking, unmanned systems, asphalt, payments, frozen foods. What are some, now when they have to choose their partnerships, they have to choose, they choose advocacy associations and they choose non-advocacy associations. So what are some challenges and opportunities they encounter when trying to pick their ecosystem that you just talked about, of which associations to partner with?
So the challenges are interesting because you want to make sure you get the associations that represent the value chain at the table. I will tell you that they are all advocacy-based associations in these ecosystems. And it's about building trust from one association to the next, and building trust one step at a time, one example at a time, one success at a time. So it's not automatic, it doesn't flow, you've got to get the buy-in, and you've got to build trust.
Now, growth may not be the only outcome of or the or manifestation of a milestone of an association. So, how do you think associations can really measure their impact, their on society, on the professional communities they represent, and the societies they're meant to serve?
So I think growth is a key component, but in order to achieve growth, you've got to have a functional business environment in order to do that. So I'm going to give you some examples. So in the boating industry, the recreational boating industry, this wasn't advocacy per se, it was industry promotion. So when we went into shutdown, what we learned is that we had to stay inside and we could go and engage in outdoor recreation. It was safe outside. So we went into shutdown in March and the summer months were coming. So the National Marine Manufacturers Association and the Recreational Boating Organization got together and they put together a promotional campaign. It was a digital campaign to promote the virtue and the value of going out on the water. And it was highly successful. And it was highly successful because it generated year-over-year increases in boat sales. So year-over-year, 2019 to 2020, there were double-digit increases as a result of this effort. But that will give you an example of how trade associations are getting far outside the traditional box, and in many cases serving as a promotional arm of the industry. So that being the case, that's one example. Another example would be the frozen food industry. That they were working with another partner organization to generate research on the types of frozen foods that people are interested in purchasing and enjoying, or would be interested in purchasing and enjoying. They provided that data to retailers, and retailers utilized it to stock their frozen food cases with those frozen food choices. That helped the frozen food industry achieve double-digit category growth. These are examples of helping industries grow. So another part of that would be having partnerships around worker safety. So I write about the asphalt pavement industry when they worked with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the labor union to come up with a way to achieve greater worker safety. So when they install new asphalt pavement, they've got to grind up the existing pavement, and that's got silica in it. And if you breathe that in, it damages your lungs and can make you very sick. So they partnered with the Occupational Safety and Health Organization as administration, as well as organized labor, to develop these safety solutions. So there are all kinds of opportunities to build partnerships and to do the right thing.
Oh, that's amazing. It's very inspiring, and a complete turnaround in terms of its outcomes and in what it was and what it hoped to, an association hoped to achieve, and it
Yes.
just exceeded expectations of every type of stakeholder. And also, while we're in the topic of stakeholder, interested to hear your thoughts on,
Yes.
this is this very clunky word. How do you deal with so many stakeholders in these different associations, and
Yes.
what is the best scenario you've seen of effective stakeholder management?
So here's what I would offer to you. So the boating industry wanted to further extend its reach, and it wanted to be recognized as an important growth component of the economy in the United States. So they had a recreational boating ecosystem. They built what I would call a super strategic partnership with the outdoor recreation industry, and they became the outdoor recreation ecosystem. What they were able to do is to get legislation passed and signed by President Obama that had them recognized as a contributor to gross domestic product. So when you see the numbers coming out of the Bureau of Labor Statistics in terms of economic growth quarterly, you're able to identify the outdoor recreation industry and the recreational boating industry as key components of economic performance and economic growth. That far exceeds expectations in the following way. When you're able to represent to governmental agencies and to elected officials that you are a key component, a driver of economic health and economic growth and prosperity, that improves your advocacy effectiveness. That is highly impactful. That's something that in my career, both as an association executive and as a practicing consultant, I'd never seen before. It's just out of this world. It's very impressive.
Do you see a lot of geographical differences in how associations are able to sustain or cope, or have you done any comparative analysis across the globe or advised any associations around the world to?
So another great question. So here's what's interesting. So trade associations have members in all parts of the country and around the world. So it's all about geographic concentration. So one of our clients is the helicopter industry. They've got a concentration here in the United States, North America, and South America, but guess what? They've got significant representation around the entire globe. And one of their focus points in their new strategy is to build an ecosystem that captures the entire industry and all of its suppliers and the entire value chain throughout the world.
There are some very local associations, and then there are some with members that are span across the world and with diaspora everywhere. That's interesting point to bring up. You talked about the unmanned systems, and that sounded like a very interesting category. What was very interesting was the use of technology and the level of human-machine interaction, or machine interaction mostly. Yes. But interested to see, because a lot of industries, like the research industry at least, is using a lot of is relying on a lot of technology and data analytics and big data systems to really those are the fastest areas of growth. So I'm curious to see what you uncovered in this unmanned systems category. You talked about partnerships with user communities, collaboration with regulators, industry cohesion.
So their big challenge is public acceptance. So as you might imagine, there's a reticence for people to ride in unmanned vehicles. And what's interesting is that I learned that there are areas by which that unmanned systems are getting traction. So one of the examples I write about in my book, in the unmanned systems chapter, and this is an interesting example. So there was a person who was shouting and screaming, and there was an alert, a 911 alert that said there's a person holding a weapon. So the Chula Vista, California police launched a drone, and the drone was able to observe that this person was holding a cigarette case, not a weapon. So as a result, the officers who responded didn't respond with weapons. They responded, and there was no use of deadly force. But that will give you an example of how that helps the quality of life. Having unmanned systems do early surveillance in catastrophic events like hurricanes or tropical storms or even snowstorms or earthquakes is very important, because it gives responders the ability to have eyes on the ground and understand the degree of devastation that exists. So unmanned systems are critically important. So let's talk about another example. So here in the United States, there is a worker shortage, and trying to recruit sufficient drivers to bring products from the ports where products are delivered from overseas to their end destinations, to the retailers or the wholesalers. There are unmanned trucks that are currently being tested. And these unmanned vehicles all utilize artificial intelligence. So there's public safety opportunities, there's opportunities to deliver things in a safe, effective, efficient manner in terms of delivering goods and services. There are multiple applications, but the key thing that this partnership continues to work to bring about is public acceptance of unmanned systems.
It sounds similar to with self-driving cars, public acceptance. Yet, if you talk about unmanned airplanes or autopilot, people will not blink. What is the psychology going on there in public acceptance?
So what's interesting. Public acceptance is all about building trust. And building trust is about knowledge and awareness of what these vehicles and these systems are. And the more that happens, the greater the acceptance. And it's just going to happen over time. But candidly, there will be a day when unmanned systems will be a considerable part of life. It's moving in that direction.
How do you see the future of nonprofit associations? I guess now we've come out from the pandemic.
Yes.
I mean, this has been the next period of acceleration, but maybe what's going to happen next 5-10 years?
So this is another great question, and here's why. So I wrote my book as a business book, but I've encouraged trade association leaders to read the book and to pay particular attention to the case studies. So in order for trade associations of any kind, not just to survive, to thrive, they have got to be aligned with the outcomes of their members. So it's not always about the programs and the services that an association provides. It's about the outcomes that you help your members achieve. And what I mean by that is that if you're a trade association, you're building an ecosystem, you're creating an advocacy program that far extends the reach of the industry. You're making it easier to bring products to the marketplace. You're making the regulatory structure far less stringent, or maybe far more rational, actually. So it's all about being aligned with the outcomes of the industries or the professions that you serve. It can't just be about the association, it's all about the members. So one of the things I talk about, first from a company perspective and then from a trade association perspective, is this concept of outside in. And what I mean by outside in is that you have a high degree of customer centricity, that you think and act and feel and see things the same way that the industry does, or as the members do. You're not thinking as an association executive, you're literally thinking as one of them, that you're literally going to their office with them in the morning and sitting around at their side of the desk, looking at the same spreadsheets or the same challenges and the same data they are, that you understand what they're trying to achieve. And you are delivering value around helping them overcome those challenges, helping them achieve those outcomes. That is the future of trade associations and all associations. Any association that's focused on member satisfaction will not survive and will not thrive.
Because members don't know what to expect, right?
It's just, when you're living in an era of chronic uncertainty, don't be looking for how satisfied your members are with your products and services. Look for how aligned your association is with their challenges and their business outcomes. What you'll find interesting is when we work with clients, one of the questions we almost always get at the beginning of our work is, oh, are you going to benchmark us against other associations in terms of best practices? And I say, it doesn't matter what the other associations are doing. The only thing that matters is how well aligned your organization is and how well you are delivering against their challenges and their outcomes. That's all that matters. At the end of the day, that's all that matters.
And this comes down to corporate or governance and corporate governance structures, because how do you think, how important is a good corporate governance structure? Well, it's important, but because people power and influence, how is this assigned in the nonprofit sector? And people always see these as power and influence from the outside, so people want to know who represents industry in newer industries like cannabis. For people who's the industry and who's going to help us. So how can you shed some light on how can how can good associations go about strong corporate governance?
The better your governance, the more effective you are. And here's what I mean by that. So we always advise our clients to first of all, have a board of directors that looks like the industry. And what I mean by that is you want small, medium, and large companies, and you want what society looks like. Society is diverse. You want to look like the industry, and you want to act like the customers of the industry. And we always advise that, because what happens is we'll get asked questions, what should our board be and what should our board look like? That's what it should be. In terms of the governance structure, boards of directors at trade associations are accountable to their members. They've got a fiduciary responsibility. And one of their responsibilities is strategy. The strategy is set by the board, and the board has the ability to launch strategic processes that creates the alignment that can lead to these strategic partnerships. So part of those partnerships is having accountability, building strategies and strategic plans that have key performance indicators, but key performance indicators that are based on the industry outcomes that need to be achieved. So governance is also about alignment with the industry's customer base, alignment with the industry, that you look and act like everybody in the industry, that you've got a representative component of the industry, and that the customers are able to relate to the industry. I believe that these strategic partnerships are communities. Communities can be unified. They can be unified in a neutral way on pre-competitive solutions, and they can do it when they look and feel like the customer base, and they have the look and feel of the industry, and they've got solid governance that goes in the direction of the industry.
And how can the talent pipeline within the trade association that is meant to support its different boards or committees, how should that look like?
The talent pipeline from the staff or the board? From
the staff.
So
like office staff, yeah.
So same answer. You want to be representative of the customers and the industry. We live in a day and age, one of the things I love about the United States, my relatives came from Italy, a generation ago. And everybody, the United States of America is a melting pot. It's a beautiful thing. And I'm proud of that. And the United States is evolving. And as the country evolves, you want your staff and you want your board to evolve as well.
What kinds of training or technologies do you think should be brought into on a regular basis, both internally and externally? Maybe more internally, since it might differ a lot externally for the different disciplines.
So there's one of the things that's really important when you're a trade association executive is you've got to know the industry and know the companies. You've got to have business acumen, and anyone going to work at a trade association has to have that business acumen, and they can get training. So it's training that you can literally go out and spend scheduled days or weeks at a time with companies. What are they doing? How do they do it? And why is it important? So that would be one type of training. The other type of training that I always suggest is that there be ongoing leadership development and communications training. One of the, we all see it as obvious, meaning that we have to be effective communicators. But I find that sometimes, even among government, that communications is a lost art. Communication is not just you talking. I'm going to share it with you another way. We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. It gives us the ability to listen, to hear, and to process what we're hearing. And I think from a training perspective, that trade associations continue to evolve in this direction, that they're bringing leaders on staff who are really effective listeners, right? Listening is just important a part of communication as speaking. And the final piece would be data. I think that data is not just important, it's increasingly important. Understanding data and analytics and what it is you need to understand about the industry and the direction it's going. So those would be the things I think from a trade association perspective that I would advise are exceedingly important.
Did you have any comments on budgeting? Because it seems to be the hottest spot for many associations, and meeting it is hard, but it's not a joke. And people promise, people overpromise, and then it becomes unexpected things happen. So, what's your advice?
Great question. So, I view strategy and strategic planning as a unified process. That if you're going to align with the industry you serve, and one of our clients just approved their strategic plan yesterday. And here's what was really impressive about it. Do you know that their entire budget was mapped to the strategies which reflected what the industry needed to achieve? Budgeting is about what the industry, and if you're running a professional association, and what your members need to achieve, not what your organization needs to achieve. Because if you're delivering on what the industry needs to achieve and what the members need to achieve, you're going to do well. If you don't, you won't. So budgeting is about what they need to achieve, not what we need to achieve. Remember, it's outside in, not inside out.
Tremendous. Yes, thank you. I think you've touched a lot of industries, except a few knowledge industries, but you did talk about unmanned systems, you talked about the others. So I'm curious to see, was there any deliberate attempt on your part to exclude the knowledge-based industries because you felt that maybe they were doing better in any case and they were profitable, they were high growth, or was there another reason that you...
Knowledge-based, you mean the professional societies?
Yes. Like
so it was... I needed to find something that would immediately connect with the economy. And this clearly did that. It's not that the professional societies don't. But what I wanted to do was to make it a point about industries and how industries, through these strategic partnerships and through these ecosystems, could really drive growth for the industry and growth for the overall economy.
Is there any goals, any specific goals you had from this book that you're seeing being achieved, or is there something else that needs to be achieved through another book? Or
so the first goal was to change the conversation, and the conversation has been changed between your podcast and television interviews and any other number of interviews. I've had about 60 or 70 different conversations, and all of that is spread like wildfire, and it's changed the conversation. I'm getting all kinds of inbound traffic from different industries wanting to build these partnerships. So the first thing was to change the conversation. But ultimately, the reason why I wrote the book was I wanted to get higher levels of executives engaged in their industry associations and build these strategic partnerships. And here's why. The more they get engaged, the more they build the ecosystem, the greater the impact the industry. This was a long-term play from my perspective. Everybody needs to have a legacy in mind. When I'm done and I finally decide I want to retire, which is a number of years away, I want to be able to look back and say, I played some role in creating a framework to energize more industry executives that led to more strategic partnerships that led to more industry growth.
do you think, is there such a thing as too many partnerships? There's a reason you say strategic, but is there still something, is there a danger of too many partnerships? And
I want to share something, one of my observations with you. I'm glad you raised that point. When executives go to business school, they're trained to function on their own, and they go to their companies and they think about what they need to do for the company. Essentially, what's happening is their orientation is to go and work in a silo. And because the world is so uncertain, because there are so many challenges, none of us can do it alone. None of us. I've got partners, strategic partners that I work with. I work with a research firm. I work with a college professor who's an economist, and on it goes. I've got a group of 55 CEOs that I work with, who in a group called the Strategic Guidance Lab. There can never be enough partners. The problems are too big and too difficult, and none of us can do it on our own.
Love that. That's very inspiring and very motivational. Is there any other takeaways that you think association executives of the future, maybe any industries that you've not touched upon that you're looking to touch upon that are directly going to answer something for the US economy or maybe the North American economy? Any other, are you setting your eyes on any other
Yes.
industry?
So I wrote an article for MarketWatch on creating a consistent energy policy. And I want to tell you, I wrote that article, going to be writing a white paper that'll come out next year and likely a book in a year or so. Mm-hmm. So here's what's interesting to me here in the United States. In the last 40 years, we've had a seesaw back and forth of energy policy, but we don't have a consistent energy policy. And with that is no pricing certainty. So what I suggested in my article is that everyone from biomass to solar, to coal, to gasoline, to natural gas, get together through the energy trade associations and build an ecosystem and develop pre-competitive solutions on everything up to and including rights of way for how to deliver all forms of energy here in the United States. And in today's world, it's doable. Now I'm going to give you another act of reimagination. And what I wrote in the article is that instead of these organizations going right to Congress or right to the administration or right to the regulators, I'm suggesting that they go to consumers and get consumers to buy in to what will be a 25-year roadmap. And then you'll have this super ecosystem of energy organizations and consumers. Then you go to the government and you say, this is what we've set out, and now we want to work with you to make this happen. Now, here's what you do by doing that. You take all the politics out of it, and you put the consumer in the middle of it. Again, this is the ultimate outside-in scenario. You lead from the consumer. You utilize the trade associations to say, at the top level, what are the pre-competitive things that we need to achieve in order to build an energy delivery mechanism where consumers can select any source of energy that they want. And at the same time, deliver that in a way that continues to reduce carbon emissions. So when somebody says, it can't be done. Well, here in the United States, this is one of the most, if not the most innovative and productive economies in the world. Of course it can be done. We just need to think about it differently. Like here in the United States, there's continual drawdowns of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and I'm saying to myself, this is counterintuitive to me. We need to be thinking up at the 100,000 foot level, and in a way that says, almost as President Kennedy did in 1962 when he said, we choose to go to the moon. Let's go and build something using our technological and innovative capabilities that delivers the very best energy delivery system in the world. That's what I'm on next.
Exciting, and I'm saying leaders always are learning. So as we part, can you share some thoughts on what is one area that you think that you're trying to learn more about in this space to make it to that next stage in your plan?
So there are some consultants that are teachers and some that are students. I'm a student. I'm always learning. I'm always reading. I'm up all hours of the day or night, reading magazines, reading articles, looking for books that uncover things that I don't know today. I have an insatiable curiosity. I'm never there. I always want to learn something new and something different. And I wrote the book because I wanted to learn. I wrote about energy. I wrote about supply chains a few months ago. I always want to learn something new and something different.
That's tremendous, and I love this. Thank you. You wrote a book because you wanted to learn. That's a lot to learn in that, and I think you've shared some very, very useful and valuable association insights here. A lot of good questions to ask as we reflect on the state of associations around the world and Canada's newcomers, legal cannabis, and nonprofits at the forefront of insights. And so with that, I'd like to thank you very much for this.